Okay, good evening everyone and welcome to Tara House. My name is John Wright and I've been asked to do this month, although I then got later on told that next Monday I'm not doing because we have a puja instead. So as long as you remind me at the end, I'll talk about what the puja is for and obviously invite you for that. Now first of all, I get a bit quiet, please give me a yell. I can't really hear how loud I'm speaking. So sometimes I can drift off and get a bit quiet, so just let me know if that's the case. Now, is anyone new to Tara House tonight at all? Okay, a couple of you. Wonderful. Okay, we'll see how we go. Okay, so obviously in Buddhism there's a lot of focus on meditation, and the purpose of the meditation is to try and bring around an inner transformation or an inner change. In other words, we're trying to make a shift inside of ourselves in terms of how we normally live our lives. Now, in terms of how do we go about that process, probably the number one thing is for us to develop more awareness of what's happening inside of ourselves. In other words, to bring our focus inside a little bit so that we're becoming more aware, for example, the sorts of things that we might say to other people or to our pets or whatever, or to inanimate objects like rocks when they get in our way. So yeah, we try to be a little bit more aware there. We try to be more aware in terms of what we do with our body, whether it's our bodily expressions or how we use our hands or things like taking things we shouldn't, those sorts of things. And of course, primarily what's driving what we say or do is what's going on in our mind. Right, so the various thoughts that are coming through in our head, or the sorts of emotions that might be arising, say at a gut level or a heart level, or sort of somewhere bubbling away in our body. So we're trying to become more aware of those. So to do that, we need obviously to withdraw our mind a little bit from what's going on around us. So what's going on around us we perceive in terms of our senses. So in other words, what we see, what we hear, what we smell, taste or touch. And of course, we also have our mental consciousness or mental sense, which is all the stuff that's going on in our mind that we can watch as well. So these things all have an impact or an influence of our state of mind or our level of mind and what's going on in there. So with meditation, we tend to close our eyes a fair bit, try to put ourselves in a quiet environment, try to put ourselves in an environment where we feel peaceful and comfortable. We might make it pretty, and as you can see here, there's been an attempt, for example, to make some nice flowers, have some nice lights, the sort of thing you might pay for when you go to a good restaurant. So you're sort of setting the atmosphere in order to do your meditation. And then you're going to get into a posture where primarily the main thing is, I guess, two things. One, you're comfortable, and secondly, you've got a nice straight back, because there's a relationship between your body and your energy channels, and your mind is sort of flowing within those energy channels. So if your body is clear, the energy body is straight, that straightens up the energy channels and helps sort of straighten up your mind. Now, if you're hunched over too much, you're either too tired or you're depressed or things like that. If we're a bit too much like that, we're probably a little bit more proud. There's a whole range of things in terms of how our physical posture can affect what's going on in our mind to some extent. So we want a nice straight back. Then we settle down and we focus on an object of meditation. And to some extent in reality that object of meditation can be anything, but some objects are easier and some objects are harder. So traditionally within Buddhism, the most common object of meditation we're taught about is following the breath, being aware of the breath, coming in through our nostrils, and we try to bring our breathing all the way down to our abdomen, so there might be some awareness of the abdomen moving in and out. So we don't want shallow breathing, so that's why you bring the awareness down there. And then the movement of the breath out, just becoming aware of that. And the breath, while we're alive, the breath is something that's always there. We don't have trouble finding it. We can have other objects of meditation, and to some extent that will depend maybe on the type of meditation you're trying to do or the sort of level you're at as well. But you could, for example, visualise an image of the Buddha, and you might visualise about a Buddha, say a body length in front, about the size of your thumb. So it's very small, very bright, and you've got to focus very hard. But that's sort of a little bit harder to hold on to or be aware of compared to your breath. Another one is you can actually focus, say, for example, on the pure nature of your mind. So when we're getting to a higher level of meditation, and there's talk about the Mahamudra tradition or the Dzogchen tradition, then the focus is on the pure nature of the mind in one aspect or another, using that as your object. Now, it's a very good object, but the challenge is it's a very hard object to find in the first place or to hold. So for us as beginners, we tend to, the breath is really the obvious object for us to focus on. And what we'll find as we sit there for a while, and we'll do some meditation later, gradually you'll start to sort of settle, your mind will settle down a bit and become smoother. And, you can sort of, I guess, get the point where you sort of sit down and you sort of drop into place to some extent, in terms of, drop into a quiet place. And that's what we're trying to do, is sort of get ourselves into a quiet place. So there's a sense of stillness there, and that gives us a bit of space away from the usual emotional reactivity we have during the day. When we come interact with people or other things, or whether it's the traffic on the road, the people you work with, your family members or whatever, often we're very busy and there's a lot of emotional reactivity going on in terms of that. So if we give ourselves a bit of time for stillness and calmness, we can start to get a little bit of space away from that emotional reactivity that's disturbing us and get, I guess, a slightly deeper awareness of what we are inside. And we can sort of develop a stronger sense of calmness and peace and insight, which we can then carry throughout the rest, a little bit throughout the rest of the day with us, for example. So in the morning, the first thing you do is get up and do that for 5 or 10 minutes. It helps sort of settle the mind and give you a sort of good focused energy to approach the rest of the day. And the other thing, for example, before you go to sleep, it gives you a chance to, in a way, settle your energy from that day, again, to put yourself into a quiet place before you sort of drop off to sleep. And look, you'll drop off to sleep, you'll be calmer, you'll go to sleep easy, I hope, but you can be a bit more aware, and sometimes you think you're awake and you, etc. That can also happen as well. But then if you've got a calm sleep, you wake up the next morning, you're less agitated as well. So it's a nice thing. But the main thing with all of that, we're not, some people, get like someone like Geshe Doga, for example, and various other people, whether it's Westerners or Tibetans, have spent, a lifetime or weeks, months, years doing intense amounts of long hours of meditation each day, doing intense retreats and stuff like that. And there will come, for all of us, there will come a time when that will be, we've got the space, we're ready for that. But the reality is, at the moment, we've all got pretty sort of busy lives and various obligations, etc. So it's very difficult for us. So really, for us, and say people like me, the main focus is to have a continuity of practice. Not think, I'll go to a weekend course of meditation, we get all fired up, this is fantastic, we're enthused for a week or two, and we sort of get distracted and it sort of drops off and we leave it alone. It's really this sort of thing of working with our mind. Our mind stays with us for all of our life. It doesn't go anywhere. Our body stays with us all of this life, although there comes a time when the mind and the body separate. We call that death. And then the mind will go on to its next existence. And because the mind's like energy, so we can't really destroy that. The body will decompose, that's not a problem. Hopefully not. As long as we're not left in the lounge room where we get too smelly and the visitors come. But that's sort of nature. That's reality for us. It's not hopefully not a big deal. But our mind's with us forever. So it's, the important thing for us, we've got to look after our mind and do something with it. We obviously look after our body as well. And there's a lot of focus in Western culture on looking after our body. And even within Tibetan Buddhism, in terms of the people who are the great practitioners, one of their vows is not to abuse your aggregates. So basically, one of those is your body. So others, you've got to look after your body, because your body's your vehicle of your mind. With your mind, you can meditate. If you develop realizations, then you can actually, you're helping yourself, and also you get in a position where you can start to help others. So it's important. we do both. But to keep in mind, the body's just a temporary thing. In one respect, it's a bit like a hotel room. You're there for a while, then we move on. Okay, so the main thing I'm trying to emphasise here, that mind's the most important thing. If we can what we want is continuity of practice. In other words, a little bit every day, whether it's every morning, every evening, or both. Or as you build up a practice, it might become more and more and more. But to be in it for the, for the long goal, not the short goal. Look, I've got a bit of stress. Let's go and sort of do something to deal with this stress. And once the stress is gone, or we get too busy and forget about it, we sort of go away from there. So if we can, is a little bit of meditation every day. Keep it simple. Keep it as something we enjoy, something we can do. And then as you build your capacity, you can start to extend it slightly, or look at other types of meditations you might bring in that you do as part of your daily routine or daily ritual. And look, we all have daily rituals. For me, 6 days a week I have muesli for breakfast with a bit of chopped up fruit on it. Come Sundays, I've got a bit more time, I'll get some egg and mushrooms and stuff, put it on toast and do something a bit more elaborate or fancy. But that's part of my ritual. During the week I get up about 6, do some meditation, go off to work. So we've all got, have a shower on weekdays, brush my teeth. We've all got those sorts of rituals. So it is, or routine. So it is, again, within meditation, if we keep it really small, it's easy to build in to our daily routine or daily ritual. And once we've got that habit there, it's there for the rest of our life. Whether we live for another couple of years or a couple of decades or half a century, it's there with us. And it's like our friend. Because it's like our best friend, because it's helping us all the time. It's helping us to centre, become more calm, more relaxed, and also develop more understanding of who we are as an individual. It's how we operate, what sorts of things influence us, how we respond in those situations. All those sorts of things we become more aware of. And as we become more aware of how our mind works, then we've got more inner freedom to deal with the circumstances that are difficult or harder for us to work with. If we're quite agitated and we don't have much awareness of our mind, and something difficult happens, it's very easy for us to go into meltdown mode and just to sort of fall apart, or really react in a way that doesn't help us or the situation or the other people involved in any shape or form. So what should happen for us over time, we're better able to centre ourselves and calm ourselves and sit in that calm or still space. When we have a difficult situation, we'll still probably get caught up in it, but hopefully we're more likely, if we do get caught up, to recognise I'm caught up and be able to pull ourselves back. Or even if we don't, later on to reflect and sort of go over it and gradually let go of it. And I think things like something happened to me really something relatively simple happened recently is, I'm a school teacher, by the way, and of course hopefully you all love doing maths, or did? No. I got a Year 12 maths class and they had a fairly difficult assessment. And one of the initial information was an equation written in a particular format. And I didn't put some brackets there. And that was sort of, that's fine, that's not a problem. If you know what you're doing, you're going to recognise you need to put some brackets here. Because this belongs with this. This is obvious. It's sort of implied. It's implied brackets. This kid didn't pick up on that. He didn't say anything, but I got an email, I think the next day, saying, da-da-da, I think this is really unfair. I don't think you've done it right, da-da-da-da-da. And, I've got, an emotional reaction has come from me in terms of that. And my initial instinct, I'm going to shoot this kid down. Write an email, point by point by point, and absolutely shoot him down. But fortunately I had enough sense to sort of pull myself back from that. But it's very interesting how you think you might be okay, and a small event can trigger emotional reactivity in us. And this, of course, is happening to us all the time. And, if we can recognise that, we've got a better chance to deal with it. And obviously, in this case, look, the kids saw me a couple of days. They said, "Oh, Mr. Wright, you didn't respond to me. Did you get my email?" I said, "Yeah." but I didn't respond to it. But he was hoping for a response. He said, look, I disagree with you, but we can talk about it another time. So, I hopefully haven't created too much. I've given him space to think about it. And next week when I go through it, I'll actually sort of explain in detail what my view is, and it's up to him whether he accepts it or not. But by then he'll be more calm, and of course I'm more calm. So that's a really, really simple example. But we're often, all the time, being in different ways or other, being pulled into emotional reactivity. Now, the traditional Buddhist translation of that is delusions. I'm talking about delusions. Delusions, things like anger, pride, jealousy, miserliness, greed, all those sorts of things called delusions. And for me, I'm not just putting this book, this particular I use as the word emotional reactivity. I thought, this actually speaks to me more close. I can connect with that language better than when I hear the word delusion. So that's why I'm sort of using the language of emotional reactivity now to sort of try and illustrate that these things are what disturbs our inner peace. And of course, where do they come from? They come from the fact that we have an incorrect view of how we view ourselves and the world around us. Right? At the moment, I see myself very strongly as an independent, permanent, self-existing entity. There's this person here called John, and it's a really, really strong sense of me or I. When I look around the room or at different objects, again, I see all these objects as having existence from their own side. And the reality is, for a start, if I look at myself, I'm changing moment by moment. I'm a combination of a body and a mind, and the mind has different parts, the body has different parts. And when I was born, my parents, my mother wanted they were thinking about different names to give me. And I ended up with being named after my two grandfathers, one of whom the Scottish grandfather was John. That's actually my middle name, but my parents started calling me John. So this body that you see in front of you is labelled John. My mother had thought to give me a good Scottish name and call me Malcolm, but if she'd won that one, I would have been called Malcolm instead. So I would have been given a different label. So we label things. And when we label things, we need a suitable basis of labelling. So when we have a table, for example, to labels, I can't say, look, I'm going to call this a table. I mean, the reason it is from a conventional point of view, because when I look at this doesn't perform normally speaking, it's not going to perform the function of a table. It performs the function of being a step. This thing here, I was going to say, traditionally a table had 4 legs. This one's got two wide legs, and it's got flat surface. I can put stuff on it. I can eat off it, put on books, whatever. So it'll perform the function of the table, so it's suitable to label it as a table in English. Or if you know another language, you'll use the appropriate language. But again, it's sort of a conventional sort of thing that we don't have a problem with. Now, when we analyse the table, it's made of parts. It's been made by someone. But we've got this idea that there is this self-existent entity here called a table. But when we look, if we sort of analyse, look through the parts, where is this self-existent entity called a table? We can't find it. And it's the same thing for ourselves. When we look, where's this self-existent entity called John? Is it one with the mind, one with the body, or is it one with a combination of the parts, or is it something separate from all those parts? And the problem is when we start to do the detailed analysis, we run into a bunch of logical fallacies. Like if it's one with the parts, like the body and the mind, then there must be 2 Johns. And I'm not sure there are 2 Johns. Then when I look at myself. Or if we say it's one with the mind, then this body is not John, because it's one with the mind. Or if I say the body's John, then the mind's not John. If I'm thinking there's a solitary single entity which is John. So there's a whole bunch of fallacies there, or logical fallacies, when we start to investigate, so, who am I? And of course, from time to time in a meditation, we can do that. And if you want to sort of read through traditional teachings, etc., there is a huge amount of teachings and texts and study we can do in terms of analysing the I to see, do we exist as we appear or not? And the answer is we don't exist as the way we appear. But the problem is because we've got this belief of an I or a me here, and it's particularly strong based on that, I've got attachment. There are things I want close to me. I've got aversion, which are things I want to push away or I don't like. And so that arises, attachment, anger, jealousy, pride, ego. All those things start to come into play. And there's these things we're talking about, the reactive emotions, because we've got this false sense of I that's driving our existence and sort of, propelling us from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. So in the case of my reactive emotion with my student, it's very interesting, that sort of stuck with me for a few days and kept coming back. It really had an impact, or coloured or tainted my mind or my inner peace or equilibrium. It was amazing how one tiny incident was like that. And the reality, of course, is all the time. Now, this, I guess, it's a slightly bigger incident, so it popped up, but all the time, whether it's at a quieter level or at a rougher level, if you like, these interactions between my mind and the objects outside me or the people outside me are happening all the time. And because it's mediated by a false sense of I, then these reactive emotions, delusions, then come into play and take over. And of course that creates a problem for us. And in reality, and we can call that suffering. Is my peace, my calm of my mind, peace of mind, has been disrupted by that. And it took away some of my inner freedom because it kept coming back, even though I didn't particularly want it to come back. I've lost some inner freedom because these things have got control over me rather than I've got control over my own mind. So that's quite a challenge for us. And so what we're trying to do with our meditation is become more aware of what's going on in our mind and to realise to a large extent we actually don't have much, we don't have a lot of control or freedom over what's going on. Things bubble up, things are happening outside, and we sort of react in an uncontrolled manner to that. And what's hopefully happening with meditation is that we start to develop, because we develop our awareness. With that awareness, we build some inner experience and in our own inner wisdom. Right? There's wisdom in books, and it's lovely to read that. There's wisdom of words that people might say, and again, we're sort of hearing that. But what we want is to transition from the wisdom we hear from someone else and make it our own wisdom, our own experience. Right? And that's the key for us in terms of our meditation. We're building our own inner experience and wisdom, and of course, seeing how we operate, looking at the things that we should try to reduce. In other words, what are the things that harm our mental well-being, our happiness, our inner peace? What are the things that harm that? And starting to recognise, this harms my inner peace, this harms my inner peace. And if you recognise that, you've got a bit of freedom. Say, look, I don't need to buy into that, or I don't want to do that. You can step back and pull yourself away from that. And then, of course, the other thing, we can start to notice or be a little bit more intuitive about what are the things that actually enhance our inner well-being. And start to recognise those situations which bring more happiness, bring a deeper sense of contentment, a deeper sense of peace, a deeper sense of well-being, more openness of our heart. We can start to become aware of those sorts of things as well, the sorts of situations or energies where that's happening. And again, if we develop that inner wisdom experience, that then helps us. Then we thought, okay, I want to point myself more in that direction. So we're making choices about our behaviour, like our mental behaviour, our verbal behaviour, and our physical behaviour, in terms of helping ourselves to do what's going to make us happier, as we progress through this life, and of course as we get at the end of this life. Because the end of this life for us is super, super important. It's a transition point for us. Right? We had a transition point, if you like, in terms of the circumstance we were born into. We've progressed through life. We've had a whole range of experiences, and which have actually brought us all here tonight, temporarily. And of course we'll go away and have other experiences. And as we progress through life, we'll get old. We are getting older. We'll get older and older. And we may live long enough to become, our body will get quite feeble and frail. We might lose some of our mental faculties. And, we become much more dependent on others. We lose our independence. We have to trust others, have to rely on others. And for some people that's incredibly challenging, managing their emotions and their mental state when their body's old. And to quote one Lama, basically, it's a drag being old. It's a real drag. Yeah, because it's so, life is the body's painful. You haven't got the energy, and it's just so much harder with an old body compared to a young body. And that then puts pressure on our emotional state and our emotional well-being. Now, if we spend our life training our mind, a little bit of meditation every day, that process is going to be easier. It won't be a surprise when it happens because we've been thinking about it. And because I know, for example, I walk around the street or I look at, I shop in Oakley often, and Oakley has a lot of old Greek men in particular. And as the years progressed, you can see, these guys are getting older, they're hobbling around more, they're the walking sticks, the wheelie walkers. They're losing, definitely lost the gloss of their youth. Mind you, I'm one of them as well. I haven't got the wheelie walker yet. And it's harder. And like my next door neighbour who died earlier this year. She got almost to 90, but the last couple of years of her life were pretty poor. She actually she wanted to die. She was waiting to die. Because her life, there wasn't much joy left for her. And she was, in one respect, she was fortunate. She had a lot of faith in God. And I know my wife and I went and saw her around about Christmas. And you could see that she had, even though she's in bed and not saying anything, she actually emanated a lot of warmth and kindness. It was really interesting. It was quite strong and quite noticeable, this warmth and kindness that she had. And, I thought, this is, you're going to have I thought you're going to have a good death because you've got your mind in the right space. I thought, it's a really nice thing. I look at other people, I think of someone else I know whose mind's not in the right space. And so when their carers come, they're very intolerant of, they tend to snap at them, they're pretty unhappy, there's not much gives them joy in life. And it's pretty hard for them, and because it's hard for them, then they take and make it a bit hard on the people who are around them as well. And we can sort of see that sometimes, and we have a hard time. We turn on our snappy Tom routine a bit, and we're likely to make it a bit harder on the people that normally we love and appreciate. I love and want to spend time with, etc. But if we're in a bad mental space, then we tend to make it a bit hard for them. So I guess the message back here is, look, this is a lifetime process, but especially at the end of, while we're sort of youthful, or very youthful in some cases, looking around, and we've got our facilities around, it's really good, that daily meditation practice, help us now, but also help us as we progress through life. So we've developed more inner wisdom, inner calm, and we can deal with situations that are difficult, right? And that's really, that's probably really important for us. And of course, for most people, the most difficult, these things can be when people close to us die, our body gets sick. If we get told we've got cancer, we've got a little while to go. That's probably going to be a challenge for most people. And then and there's a whole range of things that can be very, very emotionally difficult for us. So if we can practice for a long time, then those things can be a lot easier for us to navigate in terms of how we go through our life right now and also towards the end. Now, I've talked far more than I meant to, and the irony is almost everything on my piece of paper I haven't touched. But maybe we'll see how we go. So I'm going to talk about things that you may not have been entirely comfortable with, but that's okay. So what we should do, we're going to do about 10 minutes of meditation or so, and then we'll have some time for discussion and questions, okay? So if you need to wriggle, because you've been sitting still for pretty close to half an hour, give yourself a wriggle if you need to do that sort of. And then whatever posture you have, main thing, straight back. That'll be the main thing. Because that'll help give us a nice clear mind. And then if you want to get really formal, right hand goes on top of the left, the two thumbs touch there over the two sort of second fingers, elbows are out slightly from the body. That allows a little bit of air through. The head's tilted forward very, very slightly. The eyes are almost closed, so there's a glimmer of light in our eyes, but not enough so we're aware of what's in front of us. And then we're breathing, just breathe in through the nostrils, down to the tummy and then back out again. We're not trying to regulate our breath at all. We're just being aware of our breath as it comes in and out. And what will happen over time is our breath will naturally settle down. Now, it's also what's naturally going to occur is your mind is going to go elsewhere. And that's fine. It'll go to some of the sensations in your body. It might go be aware of sounds. You might have thoughts come in. Oh, I forgot to turn the lights off, or I've got to do this tomorrow. Or you might start planning what to do tomorrow. That'll pop up. That's not a problem. When it pops up, just let it go. We don't need to do anything with it. And that energy will it'll disappear of its own accord, like a little cloud in the puff of smoke that sort of disappears out of sight after a moment, if we leave it alone. So just keep your awareness on the sensation of the breath passing in through the nostrils and then passing out again. So that's our sole focus at the moment. Now what I want you to do is bring to mind or recall an incident where you had a reactive emotion arise recently, and to try and replay that as a video in your head or your awareness, just replaying the event, but in particular being aware of what was the impact on you and how did you react. So now that you have a bit of time to sort of re-immerse yourself in that situation where you had some emotional reactivity occurring, what I want you to do now is dissolve that situation into emptiness. Like a puff of smoke being absorbed by the sky, so we go back to a clear blue sky. So in this case, we're bringing ourselves, dissolving that experience to bring ourselves back to a clear, calm state of mind. And we just sit with the clarity and calmness of our mind for a couple of minutes. Just try to rest our awareness in this sense of calmness and quietness and clarity. Okay, so when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay, so now it's a chance for questions or comments, but my hearing's not good, although I've got electric ears, so if I don't hear you, you might have to ask you again. I'll repeat the questions so everyone can hear. So anyone's got any questions or comments or at all? You've all become too peaceful. Yes.
I noticed that my breath was as rapid as my heartbeat, and it was short and sharp. And I was trying not to look into it so much, but seeing when it starts, when it stops, and that little piece of time in between, the sweet spot, the end of an exhale, the start of an inhale, that millisecond where it transfers over. And then I was trying to do it before, but from the exhale to the inhale and the inhale to the exhale, which is a bit of a challenge, but yeah, other part.
So let me get it. So you're talking about your heartbeat and your breath were the same,
Just short.
but short and sharp. And that stayed the same the whole time, or did it change?
When I didn't put a lot of thought into my breath, I just sort of let it be, I found that I could sense it in my nose and sense it in my stomach. And it was quite similar to my heart.
Okay. So short, sharp, sense it at your heart, sense it at your stomach, sense your nose, and in sync with your heartbeat. And then the other thing you sort of talked about, you had a gap moment between the inhale and the exhale. Okay. This is. I have heard of, in terms of some lamas. I think one lama particularly used to talk. I think teach students there was a gap. There was a gap moment in between. But look, it's not a teaching I've had. As I have to say, for me, it's not an experience I've had either. So difficult for me to comment. But yeah, you're sort of looking at the space between two things happening and trying to. I think part of the thing is you're trying to expand that space of where there's just pure awareness and nothing else going on. I think, in terms of what I've heard or read, I think that's part of what's going there. But look, it's not, for me, I don't have that level of practice to really say much. Okay. Yes.
Apart from meditation, what do you recommend to do to make sure that you control attachments?
Okay, so just so apart from meditation, what can we do to deal with attachment? Was that the question? Okay, so what we did just before was a formal meditation. So there's formal meditation, there's informal meditation. Formal meditation can be analytical, where, for example, you could be meditating on the faults of attachment, for example. That would be analytical. We can have more of a direct or experiential meditation, where perhaps you just focused on the pure aware nature of your mind, for example. Or once you've got to the point where you've got this is the faults of attachment, you sort of sit there with that. We can also do meditations and use our body. So you'll see people do things like prostrations, etc., or doing hand mudras and stuff like that. We can do meditation in terms of visualisation. And to some extent I did sort of, part of what we do now was a little bit reimagine yourself back in that situation, and that would be, to some extent, it could be a visualisation, or you could do a visualisation in terms of images, the Buddha images behind us, for example. And I'll talk about that later when we finish. And you can do meditations in terms of sound. So the sound can be mantra, or it can be a group situation where people are chanting, and that chant has an impact on our consciousness, even though we don't know the meaning of the words, because it's in Tibetan, for example, can have an impact on the subtle level of our consciousness. So when we've been sitting in that energy for a while, it helps to subdue us or pull us into that energy bit. So going back to dealing with attachment when we're not in formal meditation. Okay, first of all, obviously, have an idea what attachment is really good. And of course, attachment is when you hold on to an object that's outside of us and not let go of us. So that object could be your car, could be your partner, your children, the food you want to eat, the clothes you wear, the job you've got, that sort of thing. So the thing is to become aware, do these things actually give me permanent, everlasting happiness? Now, can I actually hold on to it? Do I have the power to hold on forever? The answer is no. Does it give me everlasting happiness? No. What are its faults? So in the case, for example, if it had been, 40 or 50 years ago when I was a young gentleman and a young lady might have seen me, got attached, or that didn't happen terribly often. One of the problems, of course, if that young lady had hung around, she would have seen me get old and wrinkly and unattractive. So the object of attachment wasn't particularly reliable as a source of happiness for her, if that had been the case. So we look at the faults of the object of attachment. Does it really give us what we think it will give us? And you could, while you're going for a walk, you can sort of be mulling that through your head and ruminating on it and thinking about it and looking for examples of those sorts of things. Another one, this is one of the ones I was going to talk about tonight, was doing a meditation on our own mortality. Ready to hear this one? We all ready to hear this one? I'll make it short rather than drag it out for an hour or two, which would be the better way to do it. So the traditional meditation on death, the fact we're going to die, has three major parts. And then within the three parts, there's three parts in each of those, but we'll keep it short. The first one, it is absolutely definite we are going to die. How do we know that? Apart from the fact we're born, when we look around, can we find anyone who hasn't died? Apart from the people who are still alive. But if you look in history, I mean, if I look in my case, both my parents have died. All my grandparents have died. Of my siblings, I have one left and one who's died. Yeah, my children are still alive, but yeah, all my aunts and uncles, without exception, have died. You know, if I look on the street that I live in, I've lived in this same street now since 2002, so that's 22 years. And I was just ruminating that on last night, and I started doing a head count. So that corner down there was two who've died while we've been there. They were both in their 90s. Then we come down, my next door neighbour one side, he died when he was nearly 80. The neighbour on the other side, he died when he was 74. Then she died when she was almost 90. I go down the two houses down, he died. Go down the house down, both of them have died. Go the house across the road, he killed her, unfortunately, so she died. It's a busy street. You know, so it's not hard to find examples of people who've died. So if all these people have died, there's probably a good chance you and I might die as well. So that realisation is not too hard to generate. You just got to keep thinking about it. Yeah, and you can watch the news, you can read the obituaries in the newspaper, all that sort of stuff. Think about all the people who used to be, we have a 14th Dalai Lama. That means the 13th, the 12th, the 11th, the 10th, etc. all died. Your football players of the previous era, they've all died. Now, I come from New South Wales, so I'm going to talk about proper football players, but I'll let you recall the Victorian ones who have died. Some of them died young. I remember Darren Malone wasn't very clever about how he died. Others did get to their old. I think Jack Dyer or whatever, he got old. But, they all died. The people who get Nobel Prizes, they die. The politicians, people had enormous power. As leaders of the world, they've all died. They're not with us anymore. People had incredible control over their bodies, athletic ability. And we look at the Olympians at the moment, peak of health and fitness. That's going to change. They will get older and they will die. And the ones who were in the Olympics in the 1950s, most of them are gone. So that's the first step. We got that one? Yeah, that's the easy one. The next one is the moment death can come to us at any time. Right? And again, because we get up in the morning, think, we plan out our day. I've got tonight planned out when I go home. I've got tomorrow planned out. I haven't got my lesson plans for Wednesday done yet, but they'll be done tomorrow. I've got some of the weekend planned out. I've got some stuff planned in September. The assumption is I'm still going to be here. And we all do that. But we've got to look around, because what's happening in the human realm, as human beings, there's no fixed lifespan. Right? It varies. And in this modern world with medicine, I think the average age for men is about 78, for women is about 82 or something in Australia, but it wasn't that way. And I can certainly remember reading a history book a couple of years ago talking about Australia in the 1850s. And, they're talking about a whole bunch of different people dying in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. Not too many in their 70s, but they didn't get that far. And I can certainly remember, if anyone's been to Tassie, down there, I think Constitution Dock, where their parliament is, there's a little park with a stone wall. And in the stone wall, what they've done is they've embedded some old headstones in there. And that's fascinating, but most of them are women in their 20s. Childbirth was very dangerous. But they were all young. There weren't headstones there for someone who got to 90 or 100. And that's very rare. And even like the English royal family, there's only, in the last 1,000 years, there's only been one of them who's got to 100. So, the time of death is uncertain. And also, there are multiple causes of death. If you want to sort of put yourself in a fearful state of mind, what are the causes of death? We can be fearful of COVID. We can be fearful of being run over. We can be fearful of food poisoning. We can be fearful of, travelling somewhere and the plane crashes or we have a car accident. There's so many things that can be causes of death for our body. Because our body's sort of quite fragile. It doesn't take much to knock out the balance in our body. And if you look at a biochemistry point of view, your blood pH is really important. The amount of potassium, sodium, the different sort of ions you've got there, all those sorts of things. It's incredibly intricate bunch of stuff going on in terms of biochemistry of your body to maintain our health and well-being that we absolutely take for granted. And in some respects, it doesn't take much to knock that out of kilter. Something very small, and there's a whole bunch of cascading events that can result in our death. So that's the other side of it. And then if we go into this, the third step in this one, the things we use to help us stay alive sometimes cause our death. So, for example, our car. We used to go and buy food. We can die in our car. Get killed, for example. Or with the heat you might have in your room. If it's a gas one, it might be properly serviced, produces carbon monoxide. You die from that. So there's a whole range of things that normally use to help ourselves that we can die from as well. So that's the second group of meditation. And then where that leads us to, okay, so I'm going to die. I have no idea when I'm going to die. But what happens is we develop this very strong death awareness. And that is like a wet blanket on attachment. Because attachment involves a strong sense of I first. So if you've got a strong sense that this I can perish, can die, can be gone, that's a really powerful wet blanket to reduce attachment. And also, of course, so if you're doing a meditation on death, the third one is, I should say, so we don't send you away sort of all frightened, is we then say, okay, what's of benefit for me at the time of death? What's going to help me? And I can remember, I used to be a palliative care volunteer once a long time ago. And this guy, you said, he was spending his money and stuff. I said, look, I've never seen a hearse with a trailer behind it. You can't take it with you. And that's the thing. We can't take our money with us. We can't take our car, our house or our car with us. We can't take our friends with us. Death is a separation of the consciousness from the body. We leave all these things that we've used to make our life better or more comfortable or enjoyable don't go with us at all. And that's that. So again, that's a reason not to be attached to these things. Because actually at the time of death they don't help. And actually if we developed attachment, I'm not going to have my car anymore, my house anymore, my garden or whatever, that attachment is a hindrance at the time of death as well. So what we say is that the most important thing is how you've lived your life, and your spiritual practice throughout your life is what is a thing that's going to help you most of all. So having reduced attachment will help. But so just thinking about impermanence in different ways helps while you're walking around and just looking at stuff. It's in our face all the time that things are changing. That helps to reduce attachment. I've talked too much, haven't I? But look, that's something we could talk about for several hours or days. And if it was Lama Zopa, back in the old days, he's doing Kopang courses. The Kopang course would go for a month, and he'd teach at least 2 times a day, sometimes 3 times a day, and he could go on for 2 or 3 hours. Or I have been in teachings where I think he's gone 4 hours or 5 hours occasionally. And he can just talk about death and impermanence for that whole time, or suffering, or the lower realms, the existence of suffering there, those sorts of things. So anyway. Okay, now we've got a couple of minutes left. Is there a burning question? Otherwise I'll talk about what's happening next week. Or a non-burning question perhaps. Yes?
Is it good to think about morality?
Morality? Yep, absolutely. And this is part of you developing meditation and developing some insight or wisdom. You're seeing what disturbs your mind or harms your mind and what sort of is beneficial for your mind. And so we talk about skill, virtue and non-virtue, virtue being the actions that bring you happiness, non-virtue being the actions that bring you unhappiness or disturb your state of mind. So really morality or ethical behaviour is those actions of body, speech and mind that help us. Does that make... So I told you I was deaf.
It is really thinking about emotion.
Okay, mortality.
Yeah, like, is it okay? What was your question? Like, because you know how when you're young you don't really think about death, it's not really a concept to you. That I kind of feel like that's a good thing. Like, but should we?
Okay, so the question is, as a young person, should we be thinking of mortality? And look, we have a society that denies mortality. That's part of the issue. We live in an age where it's very uncommon for someone young to die. That hasn't been the case through history. And the reality is, I mean, for example, school I worked before, we had a 17-year-old girl die. She was healthy. Something went wrong with her liver. And within 2 weeks she was dead. Yeah? I went to funerals of kids who got killed in car accidents. I went to more funerals of kids than I did of teachers. So, but like the purpose of thinking about death and impermanence or mortality is that it can help bring into, how we say, make us more focused on what's important in life as opposed to what's trivial or meaningless. And whether you're young or old, to focus on what's more important is better. Because we can sort of fritter away a lot of time. And that's the other, especially the meditators, they spend a lot of time meditating on death and impermanence, and partly is to put pressure to make sure they don't waste their life. One of the things I didn't get today was talk about we have a human life which is incredibly precious. It has so much potential, but that human life could disappear that quickly. So while we've got it, we've got to make the best use possible of it for our own benefit and for the benefit of others. So mortality, thinking about our mortality, helps keep our focus that way so we don't waste our time too much. And also it helps reduce the oppressiveness of having too much ego. Being driven by ego, and like I said, the emotional reactivity. The stronger our understanding of definite permanence, the weaker these things will be. And they're considered a really good temporary antidote to those things. The ultimate antidote is developing what's called understanding of emptiness, or understanding the true nature of the reality of ourselves. That's the ultimate antidote. But the temporary antidote is meditation on impermanence or mortality. Yep. Okay. But my hearing's not good, so mortality and morality sounded the same to me. There's syllables I can't distinguish, or really hard to distinguish. Okay, so it's slightly after 9. So next week we don't have the usual Monday night, but the following 2 weeks after that we do, and I presume I'll be here. We'll see, won't we? But look, next week what's happening is we're doing what's called a Green Tara Puja, and Green Tara is this green lady here. So within Tibetan Buddhism there's a whole area, what's called Vajrayana or Tantra, where we have meditational deities or images of different Buddhas who represent different aspects of enlightened mind. So Green Tara is obviously female as opposed to male. She's got one leg out, which means she's ready to jump to action. She's green in colour, like growth, vibrance, getting things done. So Green Tara is the energy we sort of try to connect with, or the enlightened energy we try to connect with when we want to get things done or achieve things. Now, in particular, in this case, is dedicated to a particular lady called Sandra Kinred, who's been a very, very long-term student here at Tara House, whose health is critically ill. She's had some cancer, and I think it's come back again. I'm not sure what her situation is, but Geshe-Doga has asked us to do a puja on her behalf. But look, some of us will know Sandra, some of us won't. That doesn't matter, because also, when you're sort of doing that puja, you can bring your own list of people who need that sort of energy in their lives to help them through a difficult circumstance. So you can have in your mind, I'm coming to this puja not only dedicate to Stan, but dedicate to these people I know, but in actuality for as many, all the people who are undergoing difficulty in this life. And it's a mixture of, it's going to be, it's sort of like what's called a practice manual text that you read. So there's a whole bunch of very standard traditional prayers and so the traditional prayers are sort of like a form of guided meditation. And as you spend more and more time doing those, and how we say, sort of marinating your mind in those things, they start to take on more meaning for you. But initially you're sort of reciting words and you're just going along with the flow of the energy. Some will be in English, some will be in Tibetan. There'll be bells rang and little drums beat and things like that and chanting and stuff. And it'll run for about an hour or so. And I think even if you have no idea what's happening, you can just sit there and meditate quietly, absorb the energy, enjoy it, or participate at whatever level you feel comfortable to do, should you wish to show up. Anyway, up to you. Look, thanks enormously for coming. I'll hang around for a while later. And there's be a cup of tea and bickies in the dining room if you want to hang around for that. Otherwise, I guess we'll see you in a week or two. So thanks everyone.